Hello and welcome to our inaugural episode of Indie Spotlight, where Dean and I get to hang out with other indie TTRPG and video game creators and chat about their game. In our first ever episode, we're chatting to Richard Whitters about his new game that's currently in playtesting, Ruttigers. So, Richard, thank you so much for joining us today on our tiny little channel. We are so pleased that you've been able to come along.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It'd be very fun.
Well, that's
I'm
what
looking
we're
forward to
hoping.
talk. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about the kind of game design stuff and the way we're going at it. I I know you guys are working on a game as well. Um, so I think it'd be very fun to kind of look at, as I'm going through it, sort of look too at how different ways we go at it and different things we're doing. I think that would be very fun.
That will be exceedingly fun indeed. So,
Yeah.
we're going to cut to the chase. We're going to start off with what inspired you to create Ruttigers. So, what are all your sources of inspiration?
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's A and I've mentioned this before in other places too. It's the real root of it goes back to me and some friends of mine when we used to play AD&D way back, like close to 40 years ago. Um, and there was this feeling we had when we played back then that we were sort of like, could we, kind of capture a piece of that in a way? And at that time too, we were inspired by all kinds of different things. It was like pulp fantasy, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. Uh, to me, looking back on it, we read all the stuff like Lord of the Rings and Narnia and like everything. H.P. Lovecraft was another big one. Conan was huge. Uh, we really loved the old heavy metal magazines and stuff at the time. So we were just into like all this stuff. Um, but looking back on it, it was like probably the stuff that was closest to how we played or felt like it was like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, because Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser were just wow, we're we're doing crazy stuff in a world with like magic and thieves guilds and all that. So I think a lot of it sort of focused back there, uh, and so that's sort of I guess the literary and other entertainment kind of stuff that inspired us from way back then. And who's working on it with me are three of my really old friends who I've been friends with for about 40 years. My friend Matt, who is a physicist by trade, very
Nice.
helpful with math. Um, and my friend Clark, who's a language arts teacher, um, and like really good creative writing. Uh, Studied the classics. He's a really great fella to have. He's like another part of my brain. My friend Pat, who does a lot of like construction, like maintenance work, but he and I drew back when we were kids, kind of thing. So we've always drawn together, and now we still sketch together and throw sketches back and forth. So sort of those are the main
That's awesome.
buddies of mine that we were come together to make it. Um, and we got thinking about what we would want, like what would be a really cool book that we would want. And I think the two things that we jammed together in our heads were the Rule Cyclopedia, the D&D Rule Cyclopedia.
Mm.
Yeah.
We really liked the idea that it was a complete book. So it had like character creation, monsters, spells. It had mass combat. It had a setting. Like it sort of had all the stuff. And it's like, oh, if you have this book, you can just play the game from start to finish. We really liked that idea. And then the first edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, which to me was like a very it was just full of what I'd call like tools and toys, right? Like little rules like, oh, here's rules for underwater combat. Here's rules for potion miscability. Here's rules for, here's some random
Oh,
charts for things you can find in a dungeon. Yeah. So book wise, we were kind of like some hybrid of those two would be really cool, and that was sort of our starting point. Um, and that was a couple of years ago, at least. Matt and I had been discussing ideas before that. Um, yeah, so that was sort of those are all the bubbles of stuff that led up to it. Yeah.
Yeah, the
I
rules
love
sorry, the rules encyclopedia. That was the big white box, wasn't it? A book, hardback,
Yep.
for basic D&D, if I'm not mistaken. And it was kind of like at the end of basic D&D, they just chucked all the rules in there that had come up.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yep. 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 They put everything in one book. The setting in it was Mystara, if you know Mystara. So,
Yeah.
so basically, I had the foundation of Mystara in there, or at least what you needed to run Mystara. It had rules for going up to very high levels. It had like weapon specialization. It had skills. So it was one of the. I remember when I had it when I first picked it up back in college, because before that I'd been playing first edition, advanced. It's like, oh, we're gonna do basic. Um, so it was really interesting shift. But yes, it was I just like the fact that it sort of had everything in it. Through college, that was sort of my main, one of my main games I ran. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we're going to find out as we go through the interview. But is it going to be a challenge fitting everything you've got planned for Ruttigers into one book?
That's kind of why we looked at those books. So there's sort of two plans to it. Like we had a lot of feedback from the playtest, because the playtest is only about 30 pages or so. And we had a lot of feedback from people like, for 30 pages, there's a lot in there. So we're kind of like, okay. So right now we're looking at it. I would say the most challenging part we have to fit content is the setting, because it's really easy to write a lot about a setting. And we kind of had that. We had a thing that we've talked about for years too, and we kind of split, like, how do we do this setting, and we kind of split it into what we would call canon versus what we would call lore. So if I looked at it, for example, like Dragonlance is a wonderful setting, but it has a lot of canon, right?
Yeah.
And if you wanted to run a really good Dragonlance book or Dragonlance game, it would probably be cool if you've already read at least the initial trilogy, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of a lot of stuff. So we'd say, okay, that's canon. That doesn't make it bad or anything, but it means there's a lot more homework to it. So we thought with our setting, we're going to give enough so a DM can quickly get the ideas, but we aren't going to go too deep into canon, because within the game you can sort of fill out a lot of the canon. So we're trying to give as many hooks and inspirations and baseline ideas, and some things will be in there, like we'll have named NPCs and named locations, and we have a world map and a city map and a cosmology. But we're trying to kind of make it so you don't have to study the encyclopedia to run it.
Yeah.
So hopefully that keeps because that's the part that threatens to like bloat
yeah.
out. Yeah. Yep.
Fantastic.
So,
Thanks.
Richard,
Thanks.
I'm going to take you to something you said earlier that basically piqued my interest, and that was
Mhm.
your description about thieves' guilds.
Mhm.
So maybe because I loved reading when I was younger. Of course, I read the Raymond D. Feist books, Magician, etc. And who
Yep.
didn't love Jimmy the Hand? So
Mm.
one of my one of my questions about that was that the sort of thing that inspired you in relation to things like thieves' guilds. So I know you mentioned, was it Mouser? You've also got things like Jimmy the Hand. Those sort of characters.
Yes. Yep. Um, and that's sort of a thing. In the initial playtest, we didn't actually put in the core skills. There are a lot of things, obviously, with the playtest. We're like, we can't put all of this in, so we have to put in certain amounts. And then based on the playtest, we had some people like, oh, do you have more details on, say, skills, like core skills or how this works?
Yeah.
So we put those in later iteration, the one that I think you guys have now. But yeah, the skills sort of hook into a thing in the same way as we thought about the kind of micro classes that we have. In a lot of those stories that we were looking at, like the sort of stories that inspired us, you had, say, if I took Fafford and the Grey Mouser, the Grey Mouser was basically kind of a thief, but he was also quite adept with like a rapier, and he also dabbled in dark magic. Um, and then Fafford was basically a big barbarian, but he also knew a little bit of like whatever they call it, winter or cold magic, like, and there was a point too where he actually was like Isaac of the Jug kind of thing, and he almost became like a monk or a cleric-y type figure. And then, of course, if you look at a character like Conan, he was like a reaver and a thief and a pirate and this kind of thing. So a lot of the way we were setting up our skills and classes were to sort of give that type of variance as opposed to, I would say, like when I look at basic, especially the basic D&D, they typically had sort of just like a path, and you could maybe dual class to sort of multi-path. And we kind of wanted something a little more open, so it was like, okay, I know a little bit about this, and I can be deeper in this, and I can dabble in that. Yeah.
It's quite nice. It means you get to sort of almost like your little core, and then you get to sort of expand your character the way that you want to, which is always quite nice.
Yep, that's what we were kind of hoping for. Like your character kind of, we're thinking as you play through a game, and like I said, we've been playing for years, but you typically have your character. I've seen it happen a lot in games anyway. You get to a certain level and you're like, I see my character. I kind of want to take him this way. So we were like, oh, that would be really cool. Like your druid is going to get into more necromancy, and he's going to become like this dark, yeah, like here's the cycle of life, and I'm at the end point where it's
It's like
or something.
branches off.
Yeah. So you're like, oh, that's kind of a neat character. Like, can I do that? So we wanted to kind of make it in a way. Um, there's a design thought there as well, which to me, everything you do is like, well, this could introduce something, but it usually also introduces like a risk or a counterbalance. Um, so you do have that kind of thing. So the more you give freedom of saying, oh, you can make these choices, the more you could be like, there's some weird choices in there, or weird combos. So it's like, yeah. But I think that goes for most designs, because you sort of have some combos that line up where you have like, like say a half orc barbarian. You're like, oh, those sort of feel like they fit together. But then you say, oh, half-ling barbarian, that feels weird. So you either design it to be like, you can't do that, or you design it and say, have fun. You go. Yeah. Yeah. So.
That's great. So I suppose that actually leads on quite nicely about complexity. So if we're
Mhm.
talking about complexity, we always hear people talking about crunchy systems and light systems and in between. Where would you place Ruttigers?
So we're doing a weird thing. Uh, I'd say the baseline and what we basically have in the playtest. I would call it low complexity, especially if you've played D&D before or whatever. It's probably very low complexity. But I had an inspiration. I was watching two friends of mine. It was one of my friend Clark and another friend of mine, Sam. And I watched this process. They were playing a golf game. So if you can bear with me for an aside for a minute.
So
So I'm
Dean and I
watching.
have played loads of golf games. We completely understand.
Well,
Badly.
uh, I was watching how they generally, because this happened over maybe a few days. So, so when they first started the golf game, it sort of was at default complexity. So it had all of these things like the quality of your club mattered, the wind direction, where the ball landed on the slope. Like it had a ton of details, but that was actually sort of medium complexity. Um, and then realized what they did very quickly was dial it back to super baseline complexity, so very simple. And then they slowly spent some time playing the game, and as they got more, I guess, more adept at the base stuff, they'd be like, "Well, let's add this in, and let's add that in." And gradually, by the end of it, they were basically turning on all the dials and making it as complex as possible, and having little tournaments between each other, right? So they kind of they started in the middle, and then they were like, well, let's get this simple to get a grip on it. And then they slowly added what they wanted. And that reminded me of way back when we started. Um, and especially when I started DMing first edition AD&D, I didn't know every single rule. And also had a lot of new players or people had never played before. So we started very simple, but as we kept playing, we wanted more and more, right? And that's a lot of
Yeah.
times where the Dungeon Masters, the first edition Dungeon Masters guide came in, because it always had here's more rules for this, or here's a little more detail of that, or here's a game you can do with that. So we were so at that point I was kind of like, well, let's adopt that kind of model. So the playtest is mostly the core, and it gives some samples of things. So then we have parts that we're building on that are can be surprisingly succinct. Um, but you have a thing like here's the core way that we say how you determine attributes. But there'll be a little section of here are the variant ways that you could do that, because there's 8, 9 other ways that you could 4d6 drop the lowest, or use an array, or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, we'll just put those in as options. Um, and some of them steer the flavor of the game. Like if you kind of do old school, like 3d6 straight down in order, then you're like, okay, that's a choice. That's like a design choice, right? So if you're running a game where it's like, I want it to have this kind of feel, where we're like, it'd be cool if you could pull those components in. So we basically tried to say, okay, we have a solid core, and we want some of these core mechanics to have a bit of snap to them. So they're fun, like our break 20 mechanic and things like that. But we also are going to add these other parts where you can either have a variant, like that is not the only way you can roll attributes or determine attributes. And then other ones are options, where it's like, here's a little more detail. If you want a little more detailed rules on how lighting and cover and blindness and fog and all that work. Here's the simple encumbrance rules. Here's a little more detail. So, yeah, so we kind of, most of the playtest were things we put in where it's like, some of these you just need to play, but a lot of them were just sort of experiments. What do you think of these? But yeah, our general thing is complexity. The baseline complexity is, and what we've got from the playtest so far, it's easy to pick up on the rules. Characters are quick to make, and people can get playing quickly. But then the addition of sort of ancillary rules, options, and then our game widgets or mini games sort of allow you to dial up as you go. Yeah.
That sounds
So if
great.
that, so complexity is, it's like, yeah.
It's nice though, because you sort of start people off and so they can grasp it quickly. But then
Mhm.
as they become more experienced with the game, not just their character becoming more experienced, but then
Yep.
becoming more experienced playing it, you can basically, the GM can sort of guide them through and increase the sort of complexity and the rules available. And they'll just adapt, and it'll be a lot more natural. I really like that approach. I think it's fab.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and if we had a game that was sort of initially more complex, and you see a lot of games do this too, which I think is smart, if they're going at it that way, which is you might have like pre-made characters. So what that does is it's like, okay, we've kind of laid this out for you, so now you can learn through this and then, get to that point. So yeah, so we've so we kind of took this path. But yeah, there's this thing, and it's commonly a thing people talk about, like complexity, and it's like, is complexity good or is complexity bad or whatever.
Yeah.
But I usually just see it as, I was talking to somebody about it a little while back, and the main thing isn't necessarily about complexity, but it's sort of about time and the investment people have and things like that. So if if I was going to have a few friends over to play D&D and I have like an evening and I have like 3 or 4 hours, and I'm like, okay, we could probably play D&D. We maybe play basic. We can roll up a character pretty fast. But there's also, if I look at other games that I think are really awesome games that I enjoy, Warhammer 40K or Axis and Allies, for example. I would probably book out like half a day, or a whole weekend to
Yeah.
sort of say, this is my time. And then that would be awesome. And so oftentimes I think people take complexity as, it's good to be complex or it's bad to be complex or this or that. And so like, no, it just depends on what your kind of bracket is you're looking for, or what you're designing for. Because I personally love all those games, but I do know that if I'm burnt out after work, I'd run through and play a bit of Skyrim. I did not play Dark Souls to relax.
No.
I played Dark Souls to challenge
Don't
myself.
tell Dean I
Mm.
told you this, but he plays
Yeah.
Dark Souls and cheats.
Oh, I do. I'm terrible at Dark Souls, but I like to experience what they've created. So I'll download one of these cheat mods so that it's still challenging, but it's not overwhelming, and I can play through the game and enjoy it.
Yep.
As a single
It-
player game, I never go online with it, so I'm not cheating online. But as a single player game, yeah, really like it. Richard, I think you've touched on something there, which is a
Mhm.
lot of people view the crunchy versus light as a kind of battlefield. And I've never seen it like that.
No, not at all.
I've always seen it that it depends what mood you're in. If you've got a group of friends and you can dedicate continual time, week on week or fortnight on fortnight, and you're
Mhm.
wanting to build a big long story, you're probably going to look for a complex, crunchy system with a lot of options. But if you're only there dipping in, dipping out, then you're going to want something simple, because you don't want to spend the first few sessions just getting used to the rules or creating characters. So it really depends what you're after. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny when I started on Magic the Gathering. I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Vicky?
No, you didn't. You're fine.
No? Okay. Yeah, when I started on Magic the Gathering, they were struggling with that a bit. And the basic thing that we kind of figured out, it took a while to figure it out. But well, another thing was at Wizards, and even before I went to Wizards, I always liked making games, and I had people over once or twice a week to like experiment on them, or like make games and see if they liked it, or we would just come up with games. And a lot of them were designers who worked on Magic or D&D, so we'd talk about games a lot. Um, so yeah, when I first started on Magic, which would have been around 2007 or so, they were having a little bit of a problem. I think that at the time they might call barrier to entry. So there were a lot of mechanics piling up in each set, and people who, let's say, they missed a set or two, they were starting to feel like they were so far behind they couldn't keep up with the game. Um, so they were kind of losing people because the barrier to entry kept going up. On the other side of it, you had the game designers who were brilliant. We were talking about people who, professional poker players and mathematicians and that type of thing. Now, their job was to create and also play the game basically 24/7. Like Like I shouldn't say 24/7, but it would.
I'm
It
jealous.
wasn't rare. It wasn't rare for people to be there like 12, 14, 16 hours in a day. Making up stuff and coming up with mechanics. So you had this kind of thing where like enjoyable for them, whose basic job it is to do it, was kind of outstripping and leaving the audience back a little bit. So they sort of went to a little different model, which was each set sort of had maybe one or two key new mechanics, and then the rest of the set was sort of designed around a foundation of known kind of thing. Um, so then so then you weren't super behind on a couple of sets. You're just like, oh, there's a couple new mechanics, maybe a couple of minor mechanics. So yeah, that to me is I find that stuff fascinating of just how people think and how because we thought about that a lot in terms of what there's a lot of people making games. There's a lot of great indie game designers. So we thought a lot of like, if we're just doing something that sort of somebody else is doing, um, let we kind of don't want to do that, and we also want to kind of fit with everyone. We don't want to dislodge anyone, or we just want to do our thing. So we put a lot of thought into that of like, okay, I think this is where we kind of want to fit. Yeah.
I think that's great, and I love you harking back to Magic.
Mhm.
I think I must have lost a great deal of the 90s to my Magic the Gathering hands. I ended up having to give away my deck because I was playing it too much and I was going to fail my degree if I didn't stop. So I had an amazing it was white red deck, and it
Mhm.
must have been towards the end of the 90s. And I think I basically sold it for about 20 quid, and I had some really good rare cards, and I cry about that these days.
Oh,
Yep.
they'd probably be worth quite a bit. But thinking of 2007, I think you're referring to 8th edition, which came out. We got back into Magic around then because it was almost a
Didn't we?
fresh
Mhm.
start to the.
Yep.
So they got rid of all the old mechanics, they rewrote them, and it was a fresh start. We got back into Magic then and had a whale of a time.
Wasn't that
So
when
much
we went
easier to
out
play.
to Amsterdam,
It
wasn't it? And we were
was,
playing,
yes.
yeah, we went out to Amsterdam and we bought ourselves, we found a fantastic shop. We bought ourselves some fresh decks. And I remember we
Mhm.
sat in the
The
it was the
club
club
lounge.
lounge of the Crown Plaza Hotel playing Magic the Gathering in Amsterdam.
Yeah. It was good fun.
Yep. Yep. The
Yeah.
absolute apparently. Like I played Magic a little bit, but I was, mainly art guy and world building and stuff like that. So I never was like I'm really good at Magic or anything. Um,
Oh,
but
I was
apparently
never
the
good.
the apparently the person in the building to be afraid of was Aaron Forsyth, who still sort of like runs a lot of what Magic is now. But yeah, apparently you could be playing with Aaron, and he would just say, "Oh, you have this card and that card and that card, and you're going to do this next, and then I'll do this, and you're going to lose." and, you- and it would be like, "I don't know what to do." So
It's like every
yeah,
game I've played of Magic the Gathering, I've always ended up going, "Oh, I've got." And everyone's like, "Yeah, you're dead."
yeah, yeah.
Right. We're talking mechanics at the moment, the sort
Mhm.
of core and silly rules. And you mentioned break 20 mechanics. Could you go into a bit more detail on what that means?
Yeah. Like in going through the core mechanic stuff, Break 20 was one of the ones that really hit with people. Um, I'll just really run through quick some of the core mechanics, like basically our initiative rolls, and we're gonna do a few little tweaks to it. It's basically the player rolls, the players roll, so the DM can kind of focus on getting the fight prepped, I guess, if you're gonna do that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what we call icebreakers. So the initiative will determine whether a player goes before or after the monsters. So it's sort of our default initiative roll is sort of binary that way. We just use an attack action, a move action. Our attributes and modifiers are pretty standard to sort of like D20 kind of designs. Armor class is pretty standard, like you get armor gives you a bonus to armor class and all that kind of thing. Now the break 20 was sort of that gets into the attack roll. So basically what I was realizing was it was cool but still a bit deflating when you made an attack roll, when a player made an attack roll, and their total would be something like 24, right? So it's like, oh, I get a +2 for my strength, and I get a +2 for my, say, weapon proficiency or something. So I have a +4. So I actually rolled a 24, and the game would say, "You hit," and it's like, yeah, but I kind of wanted more than, you know. So what we did is sort of make the break 20, which I guess you would call sort of a subcritical. So in our game, if you rolled if your total attack roll was 24, you're 4 points above 20, so you would do 4 extra damage. And as you go up in level and get a higher attack bonus, if you roll a 27, you get 7 extra damage. If it's actually a natural 20, like say I rolled 20 and I had +4 and I got 24, I would double the +4 to a +8.
Oh, nice.
So in a weird way, when we're looking at the math, to some level, it simulates some of the math of things like roll an extra die of damage or things like that. It does that to a certain level, but it scales kind of with your level and skill over time. And it took us a while to work out the sort of like, here's the structure of that math and what it means as you gain levels, because that's a very tricky bit of math to do. But we worked between me and the physicist, we worked it out. Yeah.
I bet you got a lot of complicated spreadsheets showing all the different ratios and variables and your boundaries.
My spreadsheets are, let's say, if my spreadsheets are like this complicated, Matt's are like
That's as
that
well.
complicated.
Oh yeah,
He's like writing a program, to do shit, and he's like, I think this is good. I ran 10,000 combats and blah 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 blah. So it's
fantastic.
it's
No,
great.
It's really nice having that though, isn't it? Because for me, maths for me is adding up on my fingers. Dean will laugh at me. I'm terrible. Unless it's complicated maths, then I'm a lot better at it. But Dean's done all of the maths for our game because I'm like, no, just tell me what you want to roll.
Yeah.
The key, I guess, is making sure it's not for the player at least, it's not too maths heavy. As in, they're rolling dice, they're having fun, but you've done all the complicated calculations in your system to hide that from them.
That's the majority of the work, actually,
Yeah.
is to do a bunch of this math so you can state a very simple sounding rule.
Yeah.
And know that it fits into all this other complexity without the house of cards falling down and going like, there's this. And that seems really simple to you, but to us, we've easily spent like just a solid week or two just on one mathematical aspect to try to figure out. But then in the end, you just want to,
You could definitely associate that because I've seen the length of time Dean spent, so absolutely understand the amount of time that it takes to make sure that all of your maths sort of pans out and that you haven't got something that throws in an absolute curveball and completely changes it.
Yeah.
So,
and of course,
that you've got that.
Even if the maths is working out, it's the play testing. And I'm sure you must have been in the situation where the maths is sound, but when you're playing it, it doesn't feel right. There's something odd, or the numbers don't seem to quite gel. It doesn't feel natural, and you're back to the drawing board.
Yep. And I would say the most touchy part of the whole, like, there's a lot of things you can do where here's a fun little side system of this or that, but anything that touches the sort of core combat system, like your initiative and your turns, actions per round, and attacks and things like that, that tends to be the things that you're like, this would be a neat idea, and it seems very simple, and
No.
it just blows everything up.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I can relate to that.
yeah.
So what sort of numbers are we talking from, say, first level to whatever the maximum level is? What's that kind of number range like?
What do you mean by number
So
range?
for example, within fifth edition D&D,
Yeah. Yeah.
typically you start with low numbers +2 proficiency, and then your
Mhm.
attribute, and it goes all the way up to +6 plus your attribute plus additional magic, which is typically between 1 and 3. So
Yep.
it gives a range of probably about 10
Yeah.
in total, from first level all the way up to 20th. So what sort of number range would we expect?
Yeah, okay. So for like those various bonuses. So for skills, I believe we had a cap of boo, 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 boo. Well, like yes, maximum +7. So I'll kind of walk through this step by step. So another thing we had in the core rules was, or what we were testing in this play test. One of the things we were testing was this thing that we called, I guess, organic skill growth.
Mm.
So mostly when you get when you're skilled in something that comes with your class, let's say it's thievery, we'll give you what's called a boon, which is kind of it's an advantage essentially. But we just renamed it a boon a little bit because we don't necessarily just apply it to D20 rolls. We could apply it to damage rolls or any other type of rolls. So anyway, we kind of use boons. So if your character has a class where they have a skill in something, then the default skill check on anything is, as usual, D20 plus your attribute modifier versus a difficulty. So if your class gives you sort of a skill in it, you get like an advantage or a boon, which depending on the difficulty level could be somewhere in the range of like +4, +5 kind of thing. So that's sort of what a boon gives you. If you roll a natural 20, you get a +1 to that. So as you use the skill, you can slowly get better at it by using it. But you can only get a maximum of +1 per game day, kind of thing, in game. So that's one of the rules too, where we're like, let's try this out, because what we really want, there's an obvious opening there of what we would call spamming, right?
Yeah.
Where somebody could say, my character has been off work for a month and they just spent every day trying to do a skill. So we're sort of like, what we want it to be is like in game, and we want to see how players react to this, and if that's actually a thing, or if they're okay with somebody kind of doing that, or say, the intention is you do it in game and you roll in context. So we're like, okay, we think people are able to grok that, and this isn't World of Warcraft where someone's farming for coin, right?
Mm.
Um, so we're like, okay, so if people are okay with that rule, that'll let you go up to +7, naturalistically. So you could have, maybe
Mm.
+2 or 3, say, for a base bonus from your attribute. You might have a boon on top of it, and then you could get up to +7. That limit was one of the things we were trying out with the playtest too, of sort of like, is that too high? Should we lower the limit? But the other interesting thing is, since your advancement comes from rolling a natural 20, if you're a character without that boon to a skill, then you have basically a 1 in 20 chance when you roll to sort of advance the skill. If you have a boon, if you're like, I'm a thief and I have a boon to thievery, it actually doubles your chance to increase
Nice.
your skill at it. So those that start with that baseline skill will go up the ladder more quickly, kind of thing. So that was sort of the basic framework of it. But it was something that we talked about before in sort of the other video, and it's something that we're kind of looking in the playtest. I think that concept of what we might call spamming, or will somebody use this? To me, it's sort of like, we think that is a really fun, cool rule. It's only going to work at the table if you have an understanding that this isn't meant this isn't like I win. If you're really trying to win the game, you're probably a little off center anyway. Like win a game like D&D. So we're kind of like we're going to put that in the playtest, see how people react to it, and see if generally that's a fun thing, and if people can kind of go, I get it, we won't do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reminded of, in some respects, I played RuneQuest back in the day. So this is back in the 80s. And RuneQuest had a system where if you succeeded at a skill, you put a tick alongside.
Mhm.
And once every 4 weeks, so it used one-to-one time, but in a
Yep.
meaningful way, which is every 4 weeks of game time you've had, you get to check whether any skills have gone up. So you roll for your skill. If you get under your skill, it goes, if you get over your skill percentage, it goes up. But this led to when I was first playing RuneQuest, I was told, okay, we got a stream, jump over the stream, don't walk through, because then you get to use your jump skill, do this, do that, do the other. And you were constantly being told by other players, you've got to keep using skills one after the other because you're just trying to increase them.
Yep.
Is that, given feedback or given your views, do you think that that might be an issue with this sort of approach? Or have you got something in there to pretty much say only meaningful skill tests are really taken into account?
We do kind of, that is sort of what we sort of implied in there. And it's also, that to me was something we in a way wanted to test, because it's sort of a thing of I realized that in putting out the playtest, there were a lot of things that were basically self-imposed Kobayashi Marus from Star Trek, right? So I'd be like, should I do this, or should I do this, or should I do this, or should I do this? So you can get sort of in a gridlock of that. So a few things in the playtest were literally to see how people reacted to it, and sort of to see if this, will it hold together, or will people kind of say, we need this locked down more? Because to me, there's a real fine ridge of the first thing you start out in designing a game is what things can I allow the players to do? What fun stuff can I allow the players to do? And as the system branches out in complexity, more and more you start saying, what things do I tell them they can't do, so they don't topple my house of cards? So it becomes this balance of like, okay, well, how far can I go into saying you can do that, but you kids don't poke each other in the eye with the stick, right?
Yeah.
And be like, okay, we understood that when we were 6. Most of us, there's 1 in 10 that didn't. and we're like, okay, so can we do that, or do you, really, should we really clarify this? Because you get on the other side, if something's not clear, it could cause the worst thing, I think, in a game, which is arguments at the table over stuff. So that's the exact reason for the playtest, to be like, does that work, or what's that line? Yeah.
I think one of the things I've noticed with playtesting, and that's been a real advantage for us when we've playtested, is we've made sure we have some power gamers. Because if there is a rule that will break everything, they will find it. So I think from our experience, make sure you've got some power gamers in there, because it also gives you that sort of feedback on how people will try and manipulate some of your rules. Because I didn't think that we had stuff that could be taken advantage of, but there was.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there definitely was. And so before we move on, first of all, I think that's a fantastic system for skills.
I do. I like it.
And I do like it. I can see potentially, as long as you've got a good GM at the table who makes it very clear to the players, don't abuse this, because the spirit of it, I think, is fantastic. And
Yeah.
it's those moments you roll that 20 on a critical skill test and you're like, yeah, not only have I succeeded and done it, but I've got that increased point as well. How does that reflect? I take it attacks, your bonuses to attack are dealt with slightly differently to skills?
Yeah. Yep. Generally, there's a little bit of a built-in thing to that too. So I'll try to walk through that, how we thought of that. For many years in D&D, there's been different ways of handling what weapons would I apply my strength bonus to, and which weapons would I apply my dex bonus to in terms of attack, right? And you also get not only which one might give me a bonus to attack, but shouldn't strength give me damage? On attack, or maybe strength should add to my damage and dex should add to my attack bonus. And so over the years, there's been all these different ways of handling it. This is my road to get to the attack bonus, I think, because it sort of is the
Always have
structure
a path.
of what we're thinking. Yeah. So we first looked at that and said, okay, how do we want to do that? So we sort of came at it with two different ends. I took the weapons in general and said, okay, martial weapons deal a D8 and higher damage, right? So you're talking basically from sort of your long sword or in our case, like long bow, that kind of thing. Those are more martial. D8 or higher, those you apply your strength bonus to your attack. And then you get what we call rogue weapons, which deal a D6 damage or lower. So martial's D8 higher, rogue is a D8 or lower. You apply your dexterity bonus to attack with those weapons, right? And then for a fighter, for each level you take in a fighter sort of class or subclass we have, you get +1 to attack with a martial weapon. And for each level you take in like sort of one of our rogue subclasses, you get +1 to attack with a rogue weapon. And for each level you take in a caster, you get +1 to attack with whatever weapon you want every other level, like every even level. So it's sort of staggered. So then what you get there is, so like a person who has 3 levels in fighter could have +3 to attack with a specific weapon. They might have another +2 for their strength, let's say. So that's like +5 to attack. That gives you your upper limit. That sort of stops at 10th level. So that gives your upper limit of 10 plus whatever your highest modifier is, maybe 3, 4 or something like that. Typically a little lower. But so that gives you that bonus. And then of course with our break 20 system, if your attack roll is high enough, you get the extra damage on top. So that's top to bottom how we tried to blend all of that in.
I like that. It does. It's really nice because you've got very much sort of class and weapon splits, which means if you're playing this sort of class, you're going to sort of go down these sort of weapons more. So I think that's quite a nice marriage.
It is. And of course, we're talking weapons. Do spellcasters need have any of their spells requiring an attack roll?
Yeah. So one of the things we looked at too was we wanted to. You can't do it exactly, obviously, but we wanted each of the 6 attributes, strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. We wanted them to have at least sort of focus use of like, if I have a high attribute in this, then I'll kind of gravitate towards this, or I'll have an edge or a knack in that. So from what I went through there before, obviously strength and dex. Strength is great for martial weapons. Dex is great for rogue weapons. And then rogue weapons do less damage in general, but dex also adds to your armor class. So we're like, okay, so that's our attempt to balance those out a little bit. The other 4 attributes actually get into our 4 casting classes. So basically, cleric, in the way we have it, cleric is actually charisma. Druid is wisdom, because especially in more modern editions, wisdom is like perception, can be attached to tracking and things like that. So we're like, oh, wisdom kind of goes with druid well. Mage is connected to intelligence, and we have a witch or a warlock type thing, and we actually connected that to constitution. We're still working on a few little tweaks, but we would like the witch to do things that hurts itself, like causes himself damage to do better spells. So that's a little widget we're going to work on with those, but that's why we attached witch to constitution. So in the initial version of the playtest, we basically had our wildcaster rules we were trying out.
Yeah.
So basically what that is like an attack roll. You roll d20 plus your modifier. So in a mage, it would be intelligence, say, plus your level. So that's going to get you a range of, say, your bottom is going to be your base. Like if you're 5th level and you have +2, it's going to be like 7 or something. So you have a bottom down here, and then a top you can get up above 30. So we put that at like 30 plus. So you basically, when you roll to cast a spell, let's say if I got a 30 and that is actually 10 ranks, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a 20 may be 5 ranks or something like that. So we have a little chart on the character sheet that you make a spell casting roll that tells you the ranks of the spell. So the next question is, what the hell is a rank? So each of the spells
My gut tells me
basically
that's
have a
potency.
sort of rank. It is potency, yeah. So yeah, each spell has sort of a rank sort of qualifier. So like
Yeah.
a fireball deals 1d6 damage per rank.
Nice.
A disguise may last 1 hour per rank, kind of thing. So basically your spells, so we don't really have spell levels, we only have spells and cantrips. And then based on your casting roll, and as you grow, as your level grows and you're able to cast at a higher rank, your spells kind of rank up with you.
Nice. I like that. Can you tell I like playing spellcasters?
Oh,
Fun.
she does.
Yeah. People are like, yeah. Now we had an early playtest thing as well. So we only had the wildcaster, what we called the wildcaster, which was sort of like what I just described.
Yeah.
And some people were like you usually you get the taste of it. It's like, that's fun and it adds dynamics to the casting. But what if I want to play a caster that's a little more controlled, right? So we made sort of a variant system that's a controlled caster. And so if I was to describe it, a wild caster has a wide variance that's like, here's the middle. He could sort of flub it a bit, or he could punch above his weight class. A controlled caster narrows that down, where it's like,
Mhm.
you're very reliable, you know, and you may do a little better, but you're sort of much more controlled in here. So at this point, the current playtest, we have sort of a wildcaster, which is for your character who wants to just be like, ah! I'm casting. And then we have a control caster who actually starts out a little behind the curve of a wildcaster, but gradually gets up to be more reliable than the wildcaster. So we
That
kind of
sounds quite fascinating. There are there any limits on spellcasting? As in, so far, it feels like, and I might be wrong here, that you can, so long as you're happy to take the risk, you can cast whenever you want.
we actually do have the limits. Like when you take a spell, you only get. So if I have a fireball spell, then I have that like once a day, right? And so if I have a fireball spell so yes, it isn't just like infinite casting. We toyed a little bit with some stuff in the very first version that was riffing a little bit off of Shadow Dark type stuff, where it was like I roll, and if I'm successful, I can cast that spell again.
Yeah.
But we were kind of like it didn't quite sync up the way we wanted because we had failure. We had a gradient of you might cast and you might cast really good, but we also had this bottom line of failure, and it was like we kind of have a big range of like dudish to fail, and then also you might keep that spell for too long. So yeah, for right now it's sort of like, yeah, if you have 6 spells or one of each of these spells, you get to cast each of those once per day, and you can roll to see how well you cast them. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you have
Nice.
2 fireballs?
That's something we were kind of playing with in the playtest, and it's actually something I've been noodling over because I've been like, I don't like the fact that you could have too many fireball or fireball-like things, because it's one of the things we've been noodling on because you can very easily gravitate. You won't if there are other spells that are the equivalent to fireball, like say there's fireball, lightning bolt, whatever, acid spray, and you have those spells, and you have other spells that are less just directly awful to your enemies, um, then people will gravitate towards, fireball, another fireball, another fireball, another fireball. So we're looking at that right now. I had a way of dealing with that in another version. But right now we're just seeing how players react to it. But I do want to make sure that that type of spell, which we call like a blast of some sort, fireball or frost or lightning, is really just the damage type mapped. But yeah, we're looking for a way to make sure that that doesn't, you can tell you've designed a game because that design instinct is good.
Yeah, because I take it that if I'm playing a wizard, for example, at low levels, do I get like 3 spells? But I can put whatever spells I want, or almost like slots, and I can put whatever spells I want in there. Or is it I know 3 spells, and I can only cast each one once per day?
It's basically at first level, you pick 2 cantrips.
Yeah.
And you can cast each of those cantrips once per day. Then when you hit second level or every even level, you get 1 spell, right? So it goes 2 cantrips, 1 spell, 2 cantrips, 1 spell. So by the time you get to 10th level, you'll have 5 spells, 10 cantrips per day. So there is a bit of a limit on that, and we are trying to make some of the other spells that are in that category with fireball and things like that to be very, I guess you'd call it situationally tactically useful. So you can say like a fireball is really good, but if I run into this situation, this is going to be very handy. Like it's going to be even more effective in a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's basically what we have. We're still deciding on, and we're looking for some feedback on the playtest on that, see what people thought. If we wanted to allow people to repeat spells, which would be like at second level, I get a spell, fireball. At 4th level, I get another spell, fireball again. Or do we want you to vary? And I'm leaning towards right now that I think we want you to vary, so that it sort of pushes you of like, oh, I might get 1, or I might get fireball or frost, but then it pushes me into try some other spells.
Yeah. I find it quite fascinating because, of course, you're not having spells that are powerful because you only get them at high level. I take it every spell is available at low level, but some may require you to hit a rank of 4 or 5 to cast it successfully, and others may just be ranks 1 or 2.
Yeah, if I took the fireball, let's say if we took Rule Cyclopedia and the way the fireball kind of works there. I think it's 5th level.
Fifth level,
you
so
get
it's a
it.
3rd level spell. Yeah.
3rd level spell, yeah. When you're a 5th level caster, you get that. It's 5d6. And then as you go up in level, each level you gain after that, you add a d6 to it. So that basic idea is sort of like, well, at lower level, you do have a fireball, but that fireball only does 1 or 2 d6 at best, and then as you gradually go up, it's like 2 or 3 d6, 3 or 4 d6, and by the time you hit 5th level, it's about 5 d6. So it's really just filling out the bracket that is kind of implied in a lot of stuff. And the same with low level spells. Like if you had something like bark skin gives you +2 to armor class. It's like, well, we could make it so you maybe start at 1 or 2, but as you get higher level, your bark skin could get up to like 6 or 7 or something like that. So yeah, we just try to take them all and scale them across, so that you can get any spell, like you said, you can get any spell you want at low level. It's just you may not be great at it. Right?
That sounds fascinating. Yeah.
I really like that, and as I said, I love playing mages and wizards, and yeah, I'm a nutty spellcaster. So my question is, how many spells have you got in your system at the moment? How big is my plethora of magic power I can get my mitts on?
Okay, 4 layers of thing to dig into there. In the actual playtest, there are about 15 spells for each of the casting classes. As far as what we've gotten completed, or that we had from the initial build, we have double that. So we have about 30 spells for each. The thing I've been working on for the past week is sort of a spell cauldron, so we can have effects and you can maybe craft your own spells a little bit in a way, or at least customize your own spells. So we've been working on that spell cauldron a little bit. Hopefully we can get it to work, but it's very tricky to kind of work it out. But because we also want to keep it, for example, there's some things that we want to have that might feel a bit niche. So it's like you don't want everyone to be able to do healing. If you want that sort of focused in the cleric, you don't want everybody to be able to summon undead. If you want that sort of focused with the witch or sort of necromancy, your kind of necromancy demonology. So we're sort of like, okay, we can take some of these little, I guess, mini spell cauldrons and make it so you can play with different effects, and maybe customize your own a little bit. So that's another part we've been working on, where it's like, yeah, basically 30 preset spells and a little spell cauldron for each casting type. But we also have spells in general, or I guess spell effects in general, that a way we've kind of thought about them. So a lot of things which I would call the really lowest level effects, are effects that we've put in things like the field alchemy or minor enchantments. And we're kind of like, these are not very powerful. They're not super exciting. They're pretty useful. They can be pretty useful, but they're pretty basic. They're pretty simple. They're not very powerful. The next layer is what we would call cantrips, which are like kind of fun, interesting spells, a lot of utility or sort of low tactical use. And then you get spells, which are typically a lot more tactical, a lot more functional in combat, useful that way. It's fireball, summoning, creatures, things like that. And then there's another layer, which we kind of, which we call kind of Pandora or chaos magic. So those types,
the best magic.
yeah. So those types of things we're putting in scrolls and items and things like that. Because we see something like reincarnation, it's like, I don't want that to be a spell that you can do once a day, right? I want for reincarnation, I want you to find the scroll of reincarnation, and then I'm going to give you a chart. And if you roll high on the chart, you're going to reincarnate your friend, and maybe they won't be that screwed up. But on the low end of the chart, something went really wrong. So when you make that roll, you're going to be like, okay, we went in this thing, we found the scroll of reincarnation. Now we're going to, what we do, what's going to happen? So there's some of that more powerful or circumstantial magic that we kind of moved to be like, let's put this in chaos magic. And then there's the other category, which we're still fiddling with, which I would call it's sometimes magic or sometimes effects, but it's almost like deadly, nasty stuff, which is like save or die or level drain type effects. So those are almost more like traits that we're saving for very powerful monsters. Because what we want with those is if you have a save or die effect, you want it on a really, or we want it at least, on a really powerful monster so that the players probably have a very good saving throw. So the tension is, maybe there's only a 10% chance you die. But if you have five characters, that means
Yeah.
in a couple of rounds, someone will probably die.
Yeah, it adds that
Um,
tension, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we're kind of like, where does the tension fit? Where that is, you still get the, I'm scared of that, but maybe not at first level. You face that.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. I know we've kind of jumped all the way to spells and spellcasting on
That's my
our
fault.
list. No, it's no
Yeah.
one's fault. I think it's where the conversation's naturally gone.
Yep.
One question before we finish up on spells is: do
Yep.
you have? You mentioned reincarnation. Have you got things like raise dead and resurrection?
We have some of those, but they're generally that stuff we've relegated to the chaos magic stuff.
Yeah.
So probably in the game you're going to go find, the throne of resurrection or the scroll of reincarnation or whatever. And your ability, the chart you roll on it will be affected by the casting class you are. So if it's sort of a cleric version and a druid tries it, they may get like a bane to cast it.
Yeah.
Things like that. So we've basically those types of things were sort of like we want to put this in the chaos zone. So then if you're after something like that, which is very consequential and powerful in the game, there's maybe a part where you have to seek it, and then there's the part where you take the risk of fiddling with it.
Yeah.
So we kind of like that as sort of a stage, control in a way.
So at
And
low
narrative.
levels, at low levels,
Mhm.
if you lose a character, forget it. You're dead. You don't have revivifies or anything like that that can quickly bring you up. It's create a new character, but if you've invested a lot of time and effort, the campaign's been going for a year or more, and you lose
Yep.
your character, you can plead
Yep.
with the party to go on a quest to try and recover your character, playing a henchman in the meantime.
Yep.
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 Fantastic.
Yep. And that's
yeah.
Yeah. And those are sort of like the DM can kind of put that in. The difficulty of finding that item, uh, you know, they might scale it to like your party and be like, okay, it'll be difficult, but not impossible. You're like, okay. And then also when you find it, you're now faced with a very stressful random roll, which may have multiple implications. So we thought
What
that
sort of
reflected.
implications? Go on. What sort of implications? If I roll on that, I accidentally killed off Dean and we're trying to get him resurrected or we're trying to get him reincarnated. What sort of things can go terribly wrong?
Well, I will. I can send you guys like a draft of some things we have like later
Cool.
this week if you want. Because for that one, okay, so when we've kind of been working out some of these chaos items, we do a thing that I call like I don't know. I guess a good way to refer to it would be like grow the tree and then trim the branches. So we'll do a thing like for something like that, we will jam out let's say if we jammed out 40 or 50 ideas,
Yeah.
But then we're going to narrow it down to 20, right? So we'll take the ones that are that we think are the most crazy or fun or weird, and some of them will be maybe a little repetitive. We'll get rid of those. So we try to like blow it first, and then boil it down because maybe we only want 20 or 6 or 5. So for some of those, I can, like I said, send you guys some of the draft stuff, but they won't be final because it will be like we're still narrowing them. But these are some crazy options. But if either of you come up with weird, crazy options, like I'll throw them in too.
I'm always full of crazy options, so that's yeah, that would be great. I must admit, I love the sound of that, and I think it makes dying and that sort of, not just the fact that your characters died, but if they come back, you've got that sort of, oh my god, what's going to happen? Sort of, will this go well? Will it not? And then how they role play that when it actually happens. I think that's a lovely approach.
I think it's fantastic, and it brings a bit more meaningfulness to your character dying. It's a bit more impactful. Still keeping finally, I think this is almost the last couple on spells. Do you have teleportation magics?
We have right now. There's one sort of spell design that I would call sort of a minor teleport kind of thing. There's sort of variants on it, like there's sort of a teleport X number of feet.
So
or we have one
very very short range then.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
If we get into more of the, a teleport the whole party across a continent, that gets into the spell zone or the item zone, I guess. The chaos item, where it's like you probably will do that via a gate or a scroll, and you might take your chances on it. So that one hits. So like sort of a party teleport thing is probably something you want to find a gate, try it out, take your risks, or find an item. And then like an actual gate to like a different plane is definitely, we're gonna make you deal with some chaos, because that should be the thing that you're like, we're gonna try to take a gateway to Hades and save our friend. It's like, okay, let's see if that works out for you, buddy.
I love it. I love it. Probably on a similar theme, but the same with powerful divinations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you are they kind of relegated again to the item sort of area?
Yeah. Yep. We have some sort of minor divination stuff. And like a lot of versions, there's a lot of things that I think come from D&D history that have been sort of like, if I looked at certain effects like charm or command, like the very big thing was with command was it's only one word, and the creature affected may think they are dead, but they actually will not die. They will not harm themselves. So you had a spell like command that over the years sort of grew a tight way so that it didn't break the game, so that someone couldn't just say, you explode, in the instant kill spell. Because Matt and I had talked about that a little while ago. If you give enough leeway, players will turn any spell into an instant kill spell. Create water if your friends are thirsty. Can I create water in Dean's lungs or brain? Because then Dean would instantly die. So that's what players tend to do. So you got to kind of make sure you hem up those kinds of things. So yeah, that's where we looked at, like, some of these things we are keeping in limited. And what was the last one you just asked? It was
it was about divinations, the powerful divinations that allow you to scry on people, and
Yep. So we have, for scry, I made it sort of a limited thing where you get a visual, a very quick visual, which to me made, like, for an interesting narrative, because it gives you a little bit of Sherlock Holmes. It's like, oh, I can see Vicky, and I can see that there's cupboards behind her, and blah blah blah, and then the camera shuts off, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm trying to divine. Now I have to figure out where she's at. Um, and in terms of there's one that's sort of a divination in a way, which is sort of like ask a question, right? Or ask a question of your deity or foul being you worship or whatever. um, so you have that sort of, I guess, which we called like a, I don't know, request or, um, but that one again is as long as it falls in the simple thing where it's like, you can ask a yes or no question.
Mm.
And a DM can play with that a lot. Because yes or no questions are pretty limited.
Yeah.
If I'm really wondering, like, are there 12 orcs around the corner? Um, I'm as a player, that would be a bad way for me to question it.
Yeah.
Because if I say, "Are there 12 orcs around the corner?" It's like, "No, there's actually 13," or "No, there's actually 11." So, but the DM would answer, "No."
Yeah.
Right? So the yes no means there's a little bit of a game. But yeah, in the scrying, we try to keep it's sort of just like visual. You get a visual flash. And to me, that's in a way a DM tool of it allows you to drop a little hint or some hints without just giving away the game.
You mentioned earlier, Richard, you talked about cauldrons. There was the spell cauldron, and I know from what we've
Yep.
seen that you've got a character cauldron. Do you want to just talk me a little bit through that?
Yeah, it's basically just okay. So this is the one thing that my friend Matt and I found the most fun
Yeah,
was kind of rolling random characters. Um, so we made this what we call a character cauldron, which is basically just a way to quickly roll up a character, a starting character, to sort of get some random elements. So a lot of it's pretty kind of standard stuff. I'm just gonna pop it up here, but you have sort of like you can roll attributes. That's pretty standard stuff. You can determine race. For the playtest, at least, we kept it. They're pretty much the basic kind of core races. You get basically a Pecklin that's like a halfling, a stout which is like a dwarf, a human, a sci which is like elf or sort of gray or wild elf, and a
love that
firbolg which
name,
is like
Mm.
yes, I
Hecklin.
like
That's just
sci-fi.
brilliant. It
Or
is just
Pecklin, yeah.
brilliant.
It was taken a bit off of Willow, because in Willow they call them Peck, right?
Yeah,
Oh, you Peck, right? So I was like, oh, Pecklin. Um, like that makes me feel like it's halfling, So just anyway, but I liked those little names because I thought they gave a little touch of being in world.
love
Um,
that.
but the races are pretty much standard races. We have like our 20 sort of mini classes. So those again have the sort of like Conan was a reaver and a thief and those give you a little bit of that flavor to them. We added in the thing with like a few core skills, which is basically like arcana, grifting, stealth, survival, thievery, and witching, which is sort of like Sixth Sense. So that gives you a little aspect to your character. You may have a character who's sort of a brawler, but he's actually very sensitive to sensing magic. So that gives you a little bit of a mix. But one of the really fun ones we like in this is the bogies and trinkets. So you basically roll 3 of those and you get just odd things. Like your character has a copper flute, they're a wanted thief, and they have a strange jar. Right? Um, and then we have little enchantments to the side too. So what we did in playing with that is that was the part where it's like this isn't complicated, but man, we had way too much fun playing with it. Um, is we'd go through and kind of say, let's make up a few characters. And then we'd end up making like 24 random characters and going, these are pretty fun, but some of these are duds. So then we would, revamp the charts a little bit or reorganize this. But yeah, in the end, what we were trying to do is I used to find that when I played a game or when I was running games, most people didn't really have a spark of an idea for their character until maybe they got to second or third level.
Mm.
So we're finding with these few little tidbits in the character cauldron, people have a better idea of like, oh, I can kind of see who this guy is at first level or who this character is at first level. So that's one of the things we were trying to do with the cauldron. Not simply just here's like sort of the quick random roll, create a character, but also it gives you a little bit of an idea, like it inspires you to make a bit of a story for them without getting you to make like an 8-page backstory, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that, and now this is going to say, because I've seen the amount of stuff that Dean's to do to get us as to where we are with our game, and I'm hearing you talk about what I love is the fact that you and Dean both talk about the same sort of things. You approach them slightly differently, but we're
Mhm.
all looking at the same challenges with different approaches. And I
Mm.
love the fact that there's just so many different approaches to things. And I'm one of these weird people that 9 times out of 10, I will have a firm idea of what my character wants to be. And I've got this whole thing before I even sit down and start creating them. But what I found is with us doing Untold Destiny is I'm having to create more and more characters. So I've actually tried some of the sort of random rolling. And you're right, it's so nice if the actual character creation leads you down, what your character gives you an inkling of what your character can actually be. And it's actually really good fun to then see where those characters go. So I think it's fantastic that you do that. I love your little bits that you can have, and that jar, I love that. That could lead to so many different things.
I had a friend who rolled that in a game, in just a game we're playtesting, a point where we're playtesting with friends, and it was like Strange Jar. And for a little enchantment thing, he got like detect evil or something like that. So so what he parlayed that into was he had this little jar and there was this weird little creature floating in it with its eyes closed, and it was like, but when evil was around, it would open its eyes and walk around. So
That's
that was his like
awesome.
strange jar, and I was like, that's cool. Like, as us making the game, we didn't come up with that. That to me is the most fun part, where it's like we gave you little tidbits of things, you came up with that. That's the part that excites me the most about a lot of this stuff, is other people telling you like, here's what happened in my game, or here's what I came up with for this. I love that part.
Mm.
That's the most exciting part. Yeah.
And I think you're right. Isn't it great when you see other people's imaginations then intertwining with what you've created, and that in itself is just such a good feeling. So yeah, I like that jar. I really do. That's just phenomenal. I do
Yeah.
like that. What would you say would be your most unusual class? If I was to say, because I love playing sort of, well, in fact, I like playing most things, but I tend to lean more towards spellcasters. If I was to say to you, what is your weirdest, most outlandish class that you've got in the game, what would that be?
That one, it's funny because I saw that. I didn't really have a good answer to that. Like when you guys posed it, because I was sort of like, the idea we had was that sort of combination. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, it's like my friend. It's like my friend Matt, who I told you, who's a physicist. He's actually also quite a good juggler, weirdly. Um, you know, um, and weirdly too, he loves. He actually comes up with pretty good stories and traps and stuff when we're coming up with like little mini adventures and things. I often jam with him on that. So it's sort of so it's almost like that kind of thing. What I was when I thought of that question, I thought, well, what to me is the most interesting part at least with the way we've done it, is the fact that I can look at different things and sort of like a witch is kind of into sort of necromancy or demonology kind of stuff, but they aren't necessarily evil, but they get into that, heretical magic. And it's like, well, what if I had sort of a ranger that dabbled in that stuff, right? Or what if I had sort of a druid who is actually a bit of a brawler, right? So to me, the interesting classes, it wasn't really like, here's an interesting class. It was more of like, what are some odd
How do
combos
they
that would be
gel?
strange? Yeah, like what
Uh,
little combos could I do that would be interesting as a game. Uh, and then also we want to add later on to some other things you could do that are kind of beyond classes. Like you may be able to take levels to work towards lichdom, what I mean, or something like that. And we're like, okay, but this would be after you sort of hit max level. So we were looking like after max level, we called them like embraces that you could take. And we're like, some things like that could be interesting too, where but that to me would be like if I was reading a novel series of a pulp novel series of a character, that would be something that comes in later books. So we'd be like, that's probably after sort of initial levels. Yeah. So yeah, to me
Yeah,
it was the weird combos. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me. The embrace mechanic reminds me of the gold box that you had in basic D&D, the Immortals set, which is you've
Yep.
maxed your level. Is there anything else to do? Well, yeah, here's a whole host of other stuff you can now work towards, godhood or lichdom or whatever you fancy, but it took you beyond those your maximum level. What is the maximum level that you can achieve?
We have so there's a couple ways to how we're thinking about that. So max level for this playtest anyway is 10. Um, we were working out a bit of the math of like maybe letting it go to 20, but we'd have to rearrange a few things, as you probably know.
Yeah.
So we're like, maybe 20, but we have to find a place where we can kind of cap attack bonus, saving throw, and hit points, right? Because if you allow hit points to get way too high, it begins to get kind of silly. Like it's like I can never really die. And same with saving throws. Like saving throws can only go so low, right?
Yeah.
If and attack bonuses, either you start stacking armor classes way high, like you have armor class 30 or 40, which is a bit of a route that they took in 4th edition. Or you kind of like cap it somewhere and say, we're going to keep this in a certain range. So we're kind of looking at that. Right now we have it capped at 10, just to kind of keep it within that zone. We have some things mapped out, like we said, where your save stops improving, your attack bonus stops improving, and your hit points stop. But you could still do things like I'll take the steps to become a lich instead, or I'll take the steps to become like a sort of almost angelic avatar, or take the steps to be a thieves guild leader, things like that. So we were looking into that kind of thing because, like I said, I'm sure you both know there's sort of a mathematical, mechanical limit that can kind of blow the top off the game, and sometimes ends up it can either get like really boring or really over the top.
Yeah.
And falls apart.
You end up with too big a range, even in a given level. 3.5 suffered this, where if you were a straight fighter, your attack bonus at 20th level could be like 30, 35, going up to 40, depending on your magic gear and stuff like that. Whereas other people might be 20 points or even 25 points behind you. And that huge difference at that level, just it's not fun for the people who are behind. and it's stupid for the people who are ahead. They never miss, other people never hit, and you end up with this
Yep.
bloated, unbalanced system where the numbers just don't match. They don't tie up. So I think 10th level, if given that because I'm really getting a great idea here that you're,
So it's like you've got 1 to 10, and then you've almost got, then you sort of go then onto a separate track, which is almost like, so instead of you going sort of 1 to 20, what you're doing is you're going 1 to 10, and then you're almost going, and then your next path, sort of your next evolution of the character, if you like. So it's almost as if then you sort of head off down a sort of next track, which might be, say, 1 to 10, which might, but
Yeah.
it takes you down a different path for your character, rather than just adding to what your character's already got. So instead of you getting another +1, it actually takes you down a sort of story path, if you like, for the character, which will give you different things, but won't necessarily just give you additional maths. I quite like that.
Give you broader powers, new things to play with, rather than increasing the numbers constantly. I think that's fascinating. And also, if you've only got 10 levels and your class is all about mixing and matching these other classes, I think that produces some very interesting discussions about what would make the best ranger. We're dabbling into this area of magic or that area of magic, make the best ranger, or just go straight ranger for that big attack bonus at the end. But even if you deviate, you might be a point or two behind, but you gain all this magic or all these other benefits. Talking of that, or a jar, and the jar,
and the jar,
absolutely. Talking of that, is there a limit to how many classes you can become, or could you, in theory, every level become a new class?
This is something me and Matt have debated. I have a pretty strong I have a pretty strong stance on it, and in my head, it's 3. I think
I too like 3s and 5s, so you're fine.
Yeah, yeah. Like I would say, with when you have 10 levels, splitting it across 3, where you get
Makes
something like
sense.
that would get you like 3, 3, 4, or something like that. Then to me, that's sort of, if you start splitting beyond that, I feel like just even the system itself uh, could kind of striate or how do you call it, like flatten. You know what I mean? Though I do think it would work okay, but because each sort of mini class oftentimes has sort of a niche. Like this gives you a bonus with heavy weapons. This gives you a bonus with heavy melee weapons. This gives you a bonus with light range weapons. This gives you, if you spread out too much, I think what you get is sort of like those bonuses don't have synergy, I guess you would call it. So you just get a really flat character. So to me, I'm sort of, we didn't put it in on purpose, a limiter in the playtest, just to see what people would try, just to see what they would come back and say. But in my mind, it's always been like, I think 3 is where people can have a good variety and not necessarily punish themselves. Because like we were talking about, I'm not so much in this particular case. I'm not so much worried about a min-maxer, like building a terrible automaton creature. I'd be more worried about the people who really play. Like, I want to be that because that's how I imagine my character. They could really kind of nerf themselves, I guess is how you would say it.
Try
If
to
they
do
spread
too
too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna make it like 3, but it's a tabletop game, so people will do whatever the heck they want, really.
Yeah, they'll house rule if they wanted to only to be 2, or if they think now we can be unlimited. And of course your mini class, your subclass, that gives you the skills you're good at. Is that right?
Sort of. Typically, the rogues tend to have more of the skill is in D20 plus modifier like skill check. Rogues tend to have more of the skill boon type of stuff. Fighters tend to be more combat focused and less skill monkey, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
And the mages, of course, get spells. And each one of them is really just sort of a one thing. So I would say the simplest iteration of it, each of them has like a little quirky mechanic, right? But if I was to take the most simplified iteration of something you could do, it would be like this class gives you a D8 hit points and +1 to attack and damage with this type of weapon every time you take it.
Yeah.
So all the micro classes sort of stack like that. So you have +1, +1, +2, +2, +3, +3. Whereas usually in say the standard D&D way to do it would be with a lot of classes, especially more modern classes, is that at certain level you get a different ability, and at this level you get a different ability. Ours is really like, here's the widget for that class, and it stacks. And if you want a little different ability, take a level in this and stack those couple of little things.
Little
So
building
it's
blocks.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
little
they're like
building
little
blocks. Yeah, I like
Yep.
it.
Yep.
I think it's a fascinating approach. I think it works. And you're right, to make that work well, you can't give each class a lot of stuff because it's going to
Yep.
mix and match with other classes to broaden what you can do. And I guess
Right.
that's how you stop someone just going, I'm going to go all the classes and get all my skills with a boon, and I'll be the big skill monkey, because really I go a rogue, I go another type of rogue to potentially expand my skills slightly, but my combat abilities are dropping behind a bit. And,
Yep.
if I want to do a bit of magic, I'm not getting skills, but I'm getting magic now. But my magic power is limited. I've only got level 1. So I'm only adding 1 to my D20 roll, and I have to have the right attribute at the right level. So it all kind of self-balances in the
I
end.
like it.
Yeah. Now, saving throws. You mentioned something, which is saving throws going down. Are you using the classic sort of D&D, AD&D saving throws, where they start off at a high number, and then as you gain levels, they go down? So you got to roll that number. So effectively, your saving throw is your difficulty class.
Sort of. The way we've done it is the default saving throw, I guess difficulty is 15, right? And when you roll one, now this is a thing that we've been looking at because we may tweak it. So I'll tell you this, but Matt and I have been digging into it. But the way it works currently is to make a saving throw, you roll D20 plus your attribute modifier. So like, Dex or whatever it is, plus your level, versus 15. So the real limiter there is, at 10th level, if I had something like a +3 modifier and I'm 10th level, I now have a +13 and my difficulty is 15. So at that point, you're only failing a save on maybe a 1 or a 2. I guess it would just be a 1 kind of thing. So you really get like a 5% chance to fail. And we're like, that's probably the upper limits we want. Now, most characters won't have +3 in everything. So they'll have, at that point in their career, sort of a 5 to maybe 20% chance to fail, depending on the save. And that's where you have, that's where you meet the monsters who have save or die or things like that. But we were kind of like, that's kind of the upper limit we want, where you actually have a character at that level and you're like, I'm pretty certain I'm going to make the save, but at this point, if I fail a save, it's going to be real bad for me, right?
That's still a squeaky bum moment on the save, isn't it? It's like, ooh.
Yeah, we have a tale of one of the players, a guy called Owen, lovely chap, but he was playing a dwarf in AD&D, and he met a group of kobolds, big army of kobolds actually. And he was high level, and he went, I'm ignoring them. they're shooting at me with poisoned arrows, but I need to roll a 1 on my saving throw. I'll be fine. And he went leaping into the air using a flying item. And I randomly rolled and I went, right, 4 arrows have hit you. And he passed, and then a natural 1. And that was it. He came falling from the sky. And
Yep.
You always take that risk, and rolling that 1 is always possible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Especially, I think that's a lot of things you have to watch out for too, is the cumulative math. Because like we were saying, it's like every character save or die each round. And you're like, okay, well, let's say they only have a 5% chance. But if there's 5 characters, there's a 25% chance, really rough math, but a 25% chance in that first round that one of them is just going to die.
Yeah.
And then the next round, the more rounds you add to that possibility, the more it becomes a certainty. One of you going to die the longer this combat goes. So you have to kind of watch, as you watch out for that kind of math, because you're like, this can be very brutal. Even though it seems very safe, it can be scary.
Yeah, and of course, the more chance that the player has of passing something, the more severe the consequence you can put in, because more often than not, they're going to pass it and it won't come to pass, as in they won't have that condition to deal with. I find that fascinating. I don't think I've got any more questions on the character cauldron, and I think we ventured into character classes as well, didn't we?
We always venture all over the place.
Yeah. No, I think well, that's what I figured too. It would sort of flow naturally once we get into it. Because like I was saying to you guys when I replied back, when you're making a system, there's sort of like all your ideas and you're organizing all the stuff. And then comes sometimes what's the biggest trick, which I have to explain this to other people in a fairly step-by-step organized way. And that's where I sort of like, oh, if we could kind of walk through it like this, I know it's going to deviate here and there, but at least we're kind of like building on it, because it honestly can get out of my hands too. Of like, there's so much.
But I don't know about you. When you're doing stuff like this, I think one of the biggest things is that all of us suffer the same issue, which is we can talk about game design and games and what we're doing until the cows come home. We love it so much, and I think the passion that I'm hearing from you, it's just been phenomenal. But I do want to talk about armor and weapons before you decide, if that's okay with you, because
absolutely,
we've talked about armor class, and that was something that we thought. We basically went all around the houses with armor class, and when we were doing our game, and eventually we ended up doing away with it. So we don't have armor class in our game at all anymore. But
really,
it's
did you go like damage reduction type thing, or
we got damage reduction in there, but it's a armor save. We've gone dodge and parry. So when someone is hit, unless they dodge or parry, they're hit. And that is an opposed roll, and the person attacking has to get higher than the opponent's dodge or parry. To speed up combat, when I'm running a lot of creatures, my creatures will have an average number. So they always hit with a 20 or 22. So it's up to the player. They're in the action. They've got to roll a dodge or parry higher than a 22 or higher. And when they attack a creature, the creature might have a passive defense of, something like it will always, when it parries, have a parry roll of 23. So unless the player gets higher than a 23, the creature can spend stamina and parry the attack. So it's a back and forth, keeping the player engaged. And
really fun,
whilst we had armor class as a kind of threshold for the attack to hit, it was one step we didn't need. So I got rid of it, and it just made sense for us to get rid of armor, and then armor translated into an armor save to give you resistance against the damage you're taking from weapons, and that works really well.
That's very cool. Because the other part of that, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so it'd be really cool to just delve into how your armor works,
Yeah.
because as I said,
Yeah.
we went around the houses,
Mm.
God knows how many times. We had standard ACs, we went up and we went down, and
We had
we
DR
went,
at one point, but God,
yeah,
the mass. I did a high level test, and at the end of the high level test, I have a thing called DM fatigue. And if,
Mhm.
as a DM, I'm constantly doing the same task multiple times in a combat or something like that, eventually you get fatigue set in. It's too much.
Yeah.
And you begin to disconnect from the situation, disconnect from the players, and you don't feel like you're giving the game your attention because you're just fatigued out from maths and rolling.
Yeah.
And when we had DR, the amount of times I was subtracting numbers, and I just got fatigued. And at the end of that combat, I turned around to Vicky and went, "No, it's got to change. We're dropping DR. It's too much as a DM to run a game and constantly be taking your damage numbers and taking numbers away from it."
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's it.
yeah. So what did when it comes to your armor, how does
Yeah.
that work? What benefits does it give you?
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna throw one thing in first about what's cool about your system that you described there is because the players are rolling to parry or to dodge, then I think, and you got that before, on their off turn, they get to react. I think that's
yeah,
a really, really, really cool way to handle it.
yeah,
Um, we went with the armor. It's very basic. Like we just have sort of you get your armor, you get your armor class. Your armor typically defines your movement.
Mm.
Um,
I
so
like that.
heavier the armor, lower the movement. Um, we we kept it. That part is pretty basic. The weapons, as I mentioned before, we have each weapon has sort of a small little trick to it. Nothing too complicated, just some little edge or some little quirk that you have to think about. Um, and as I said, they're split. Uh, that idea we have of like, if it's a D8 or if it does a D8 or higher damage, it's a strength weapon. If it does a D6 or lower damage, it's a dex weapon. That to me models a bit of what I think about, at least in the world. You need a sort of lighter weapon that probably does less damage as your dex weapon,
Mm.
but it also mathematically adds a bit of balance, um, and gives you, if you were to make up your own weapons, it gives you a bit of a, a, a way to a guide to follow. I guess it's much easier
I
to
like
throw
that.
that in. Yep. Um, and what we got, and also in the sort of equipment section of the playtest, it's really just like we threw in some basic things, kind of thing. But since it's a playtest, I didn't put in all the different, you know, because in the final version, like we have stuff. Like there was one thing I really liked in AD&D, Player's Handbook, way back when, first
Mm.
edition, is you'd get like armor and weapons, and then you get equipment, and then you get to this other page and it was like livestock, like do you want a chicken or and then this and that. So
Don't
there's a
laugh.
point
We've
that
got livestock.
Yep.
it's awesome, right?
It
It's like,
is.
yeah, you want that, right? You're like, that's so cool. So yeah, we have this a much broader, basically, of like what can you spend your money on, right? And then you get
Yeah,
into livestock, lodging,
Mm.
ships or holds and things like that. Um, so, but for the playtest, it was pretty limited. But we didn't do, yeah, we armor and armor class was one of the ones we sort of kept. It's like, okay, that's going to be, we aren't going to fiddle with that too much. But a reason for it too was when we get to the later part, which is like character cauldron or a
Mm.
creature cauldron, I should say,
yeah,
where you can make your own monsters. It was sort of one of those things where it's like, okay, um, we are doing little tweaks to a lot of different parts of the system, but maybe that one we'll just leave like this. But it was another one for the playtest. We did get some feedback. People were asking, like, can armor take damage? Can weapons take damage? We have an ancillary rule for parry, dodge, and block, or parry, dodge, block, deflect, or something like deflecting an arrow. So we had rules like that were basically where you're kind of saving a move action for your off turn to give yourself a reaction, and then you can do basically an attack roll against the enemy's attack roll.
Nice.
Right. So that was one of the ones that we were kind of like, we're going to put that in as like sort of an optional ancillary rule. And if people want that, they can do it, and it should be relatively balanced, even if some characters use it and some don't. It still has sort of you have to give up a move action to do this, and you have to do that. That kind of thing. So there's a few things like that where we were kind of the sort of granularity of ways of dealing with it, and some things we kind of put it in like an optional mini system, or like we'll put that here. But that one, we were actually debating the other day whether to put that portion in the next V2 of the playtest. Because on the one hand, we want people to test the system and tell us what they think. But at this point too, we don't want too much noise, I guess.
Yeah.
Like we want to make sure you really, is this working? Like, is this gonna, is it fun to play? Does it hold up? Kind of thing.
Core settled and have that really thoroughly tested. So otherwise, if you start putting in too much right now into your playtest, you can get noise about here and you're still unsure whether the core is solid. That makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's a few things there. And like I said, I feel like, especially with you guys, you're working on your game, there's a bunch of stuff I could send you guys to look at just outside that I wouldn't, publicly throw out in a playtest, that I could share with you to look at that you might find fun. And if it sparked any ideas, I would say to you guys, knock stuff out, go whatever you want to do with it. Because so I might send you guys some stuff. We dig it up in the next few weeks that you can just look at, because you guys are designing a game too. So I'm like, share, like scientists. Share the
absolutely.
studies, see what kind of weird rabbit hole we've gone down.
Do you know what? What I love about our hobby is, with all the different systems you've got, they all have strengths, weaknesses. They all appeal to some certain players or some certain play styles. And even as I'm listening to what you telling me about yours, it's so different to what I've designed, and I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving the sound of yours.
But you know what I love? And that's because I hear both. I listen to Dean Ritter on all the time, but you're both talking about exactly the same problems, and I love the different approaches and how we all played AD&D. We've got really amazing memories of playing AD&D. We loved it. That's when I broke my teeth on too. Admittedly, Dean played before me, but we love those old games, and we want to capture how we felt then, but we want to make it for now. We want to address the issues that we found back then, and we want to make sure that we sort of get round them, and we're all working towards the same sort of things. We're all approaching it from different ways, and I think that's just so nice, because there's so many different systems out there that are approaching everything slightly differently. It means that there's something out there for pretty much everyone. And I really do like the sound of your system. I love the way that it comes across. I think it's exciting. It makes me quite happy just listening to it. And that's what I love. And I mean, one of the big sticking points, here you go, this is a question for you. One of the big sticking points, and something that we came up against with people going, oh, we don't want that. And we're like, oh, we're doing it. It's encumbrance. Because
Yeah.
we've gone down an encumbrance system. It's a simple, straightforward one, but we have it.
Yep.
And when you said about heavy armor reduces your movement, I was wondering if you're sort of going down the sort of encumbrance route, or is that something you've got? That's just too much like hard work. Because everybody hates it and ignores it anyway.
That's exactly a good example of one of the things that we were kind of tackling in sort of a modular way. Like if you go way back to what I was saying about the golf game,
Yeah.
and my friends choosing options. So I put a really basic, and I would say I would even call it like not quite with a bow on top encumbered system in the playtest, right? Kind of on purpose. Because, well, I say kind of on purpose because I had some typos and stuff and things that were wrong from my copy and paste, so that was completely just my fault. But on the other hand, like you just said, I was curious of if I would get a lot of feedback from playtesters that said we need a better encumbrance system, right? Or would it just kind of be invisible? Or would it actually get active feedback like that we saw an encumbrance system, we never use it, right? Now, most times the most feedback I think that you get from people is negative, because there are some things that if you do something really cool, I think people will be like, "That's pretty neat," right? But it kind of has to be like a good step above for people to go, "That's really neat," like it's much more common for human beings, I think, to be like, that's a bit off, that's a bit off, and that's not necessarily negative. That's also the mentality of your friend who's giving an editing review to your story, right? Um, so it's like it's much more common than that. So what I was expecting was, let's put this in here, this, see how people react. And since it's not too hefty, I'm more likely to get in a reaction if people want it to be like, we want more stuff. This should be more detailed. So in general, for that was some of the playtest feedback. We didn't really hear a whole lot. And some people were like, I think you got to tweak the wording a bit, but it didn't seem like a huge thing for people. But we do have variants on the encumbrance system, but we've kept it pretty basic, which is sort of probably one that a lot of games have used something similar, where it's like if you had a 14 strength, then you get 14 slots, and then heavy armor might take up this many slots, and a heavy weapon might take up this many slots, and you just sort of plan your slots. So I think our core is just going to be, I'll tighten it up a little bit. It's going to be basically that. Now we do have another little widget that we added on where you have a little list of 1 to 20. So you can actually write in what is in each slot, right? And kind of be like, oh, these 2 slots are taken up by my armor, and then 6 daggers are in this slot or something. So basically get 1 to 20. But if you only have 14 strength and you only have so many items, it might be less slots. And the reason we did that was we made a little system so that for item saving throws or losing items. So if you fall into a river, roll a d20. The more stuff you're carrying, the more slots you have filled out, the more chance you lose something from one of the slots, right? And then you get hit by a dragon's breath and you want to make a saving throw. Roll a couple of times to see which items you might need to save for from the dragon's breath. So that to me would be, there's a lot of times where we've taken mechanics and kind of been, here's the part that people understand. Let's add maybe a little widget to it that sort of expands it or adds a little piece to it. But we don't need to redesign that part, because if that's simple, if that's a working little cog, we can keep that one simple. So yeah, we didn't go super into encumbrance. We kept it sort of neutral. I haven't heard much feedback of now. What I would say, just to start the last thing, I think in a certain style of game and in certain situations in games, encumbrance becomes very important.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing the dungeon crawl, or if you're crossing a desert and resources are important, anywhere where resources are important. So to me, it was like we want it simple, a simple fundamental system that'll work, but not too complicated. And also, you can lose stuff, which I think is fun.
I think that mechanic's fascinating. The more stuff you carry, the more chance you got of something being damaged
I
or
like
being
that.
lost. I love that.
Yeah.
Really like it.
It's much fairer than the fact, because we've got an encumbrance system, that you have a horse called Inky, that then a griffin goes and steals and carries off with all your stuff.
Yep. Yes.
Did a
Well,
mean
half your
DM
stuff.
do that
Half
to
your
you?
stuff. Yes, I did. They knew griffins loved horses, and they had 2 pack horses because we use encumbrance, and most adventuring parties need a mule or some similar animal. And one of them just got picked up and carted off, and that was it. Half their gear gone.
Vicky, there's a place you can report game master abuse.
Is that
And
fantastic?
yes. We should set that up so people can do that. So we
Yes.
can
We should. I think we
publicly,
should.
yes,
Publicly shame your DM.
publicly shame. What the?
You know something? I feel a stream coming on.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'll have people lining up for miles.
I love that. I like the fact it's a straightforward encumbrance system, that
Yeah.
it's not overbearing, that someone even like me and my finger maths can work out. But at the same time, I love the fact that, yeah, if you've got all of these slots filled out, there's more of a chance of you losing something when that dragon breathes on you. I think that's a beautiful mechanic.
Yeah. I like
Absolutely stunning.
Yeah. So, Honey, do you have anything else on gear before I move on to treasure?
No, I was actually going to start talking about treasure, because I'm a player and I always like treasure. Dean, who never gives enough out.
Oh, jeez, really? I will remind you, back in the days, most DMs around their tables hardly gave out any treasure. So
I was stingy in the playtest and didn't even put treasure stuff in. But I know. And the weird part is, we didn't really get it.
You though. I did see someone
get any. What's that?
Yeah. I'm sure I saw someone on X ask you about treasure, or what money they had to start with or something.
Yes. Yeah, they got starting coin. That was my worst mess up in the original playtest. I was like, now you can buy equipment. And I didn't tell you how much starting money you had to buy. It's like, oh no. So I had to put out a little picture of our little character Gimlet. And I was like, oh, the money lender forgot to give your so I assured people that proper person got fired for that. No, with the treasure, which is another one of those things where I was when I was talking about what do I put in and how much noise might it add to the playtest. The whole treasure system we have, I was like, okay, I might hold off on that. Though we do have a full system for it. It's very much in a way like the spell system, where you roll and you kind of get ranks, you know? So the way our system works is, let's say you kill a goblin and he's like first level. Then you would roll like a d20 plus 1 for his level to see what sort of category of treasure or treasures he might have on him. And then as you get higher level, obviously, if it's like a 10th level monster, you could get as high as 30, right?
Mm.
And higher level monsters you can get up past 30. So it's this little chart, and it's sort of split into categories. So you sort of have basically kind of like minor junk, minor coinage, minor magic, right?
Mm.
And then you sort of get like sort of median sort of magic item, or median sort of coinage, median sort of magic item, sort of like a little more coinage, a little more powerful magic item, and then you get sort of like quite a powerful magic item and chaos something, right? Like those chaos sort of things. But because of the nature of it, you won't, depending on the level of monster that you're rolling for, it won't break a barrier. Like a low level monster will not have the Eye of Vecna,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Just by the nature of the scaling of the chart. So there's basically those categories. A lot of the minor magic stuff, really minor magic stuff, is very similar to effects that you would find in like our field alchemy section or the minor enchantments in the character cauldron, things like that. Obviously, little trinkets like, oh, you get a piece of lint and a rock, which is sort of your lowest. This is what you find in a goblin backpack. Yeah, and then the items sort of roll up from there. But we also tried to make the system a bit where there's an interesting thing with items versus effect. So we tried to randomize some of that, because I used to really like that, again, in the DMG, first edition DMG. They sort of categorized items where, like, is it a weapon? Is it a potion? Is it a scroll? So we try to build some of that in, of like, oh, you found like a minor magic item and it's a ring and it does this, right? So it's sort of a little series of random charts and things, with different little effects. And then the chaos items, as you get more powerful, you get less random and more, this is the scroll of summoning demons, and these are all the terrible things that could go wrong. Yeah. Yep.
That sounds
So,
great.
but that, we were looking at that too, and we're like, just this portion could take up a large part of the playtest. So we're like, okay, we'll save that back a little bit. I may send it out as a separate little supplement.
That's almost like when you're starting to get into a bit more of your sort of campaign sort of testing, isn't it? When you're starting to look at how the treasure then affects the gameplay.
Yep. 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 And the big part you have, I don't know if you all found this too in making your game. The effects, there's sort of, I guess, what you would call measurable or quantifiable effects, which typically have to do with the core mechanics. So this will affect your attack roll. It'll affect an attack roll damage. Let's say armor class, if you have that, hit points, movement. So those get into things that you call quantifiable. And then there are other magical effects, let's say like disguise, right? Or we were saying like teleport can be a little weird sometimes, because it's not just movement. It's this type of, it's not ground-based straight movement. You might teleport or around. So that's a really fascinating part to me, of like, we're fishing around for the quantifiable effects, tend to have these buckets, and you can sort of organize them. But a lot of the really fun stuff is in the sort of less quantifiable effects. Those can be really fun. Yeah. So we were digging around with those a bit, but you have to be really careful, because Players will make anything into an instant death spell
Yeah.
if you do something wrong. Yeah.
The number of arguments I remember in the past where somebody took a spell and tried to twist it to do something absolutely bananas with it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're right. A lot of designing a system is to try and prevent those arguments at the table, to give the DM
Yep.
support or the GM support they need to run a game without an overbearing player saying, well, it says here that I should
Yep.
be able to, and my interpretation is I should be able to kill
Yep.
that person. Yeah.
Yep. See, now that's what we should really do. We should form like an online council of DM
Yeah.
game designers, and then DMs and players can come in front of the council and make their cases, and
I
then we
like
will
that.
deem their in-game punishment for what they've done.
Absolutely.
Like your
Yes.
character
I think that's
goes
brilliant.
bald.
I do feel we're playing both sides here. One supporting the GMs, and then the other one having players come forward with all the dirt on their GMs and the cruel
And-
things they've
And
done.
I think it's needed for balance.
Probably.
Yes. The main part I like about this system is that we would be the judges. That's the
I love that. I think that's
I do.
fantastic.
I think that's brilliant. I've
Mm.
got no arguments about this at all. Does that mean I can ban Jack from ever having Fireball?
you can. Yeah. You
Yes.
can make him and you can give punishments like you have to shave your mustache.
Oh. Ooh.
Oh, the power.
Right. To bring things back to
The sensible one. You can see Richard. I embrace chaos.
you do.
Yeah.
You are the chaos goblin of the family. The creature cauldron. The creature cauldron. This has really got me fascinated. Could you talk us through the creature cauldron? What is it?
Okay, so the base creature cauldron we have in the playtest is really just a set of 15, I think it is, scaling stat blocks, right?
Mhm.
So they kind of go, I think, from a quarter hit die up to like now I forget, is it 10 or 15? Pretty sad when I have to go look at
Oh, no, it
something I
isn't.
wrote.
You've got
But
so
it's
much
been a
going on in
while.
your head. You can't keep it all there.
Oh, here we go. Yes, I put it up to 15. So it's actually 15 plus 15 stat blocks plus you have a half and a quarter. So 17 stat blocks.
17 in total. Nice.
Yep. So they're sort of standard. And then we give you some ways that you can tweak them a little bit. Like what if it what if it has a slightly higher attack bonus but a lower this or that? So you can so each of the stat blocks you sort of can tweak it a little bit. But the big part we added into it too were special traits, which are on kind of the following page of that section. So the special traits are obviously things that your monster can do. Like do they have dark vision or can they teleport every once in a while or something like that? So we broke those traits into 2 categories. The first category we kind of called net neutral, right? So that would be like, okay, they have really good dark vision, but in full light, they get a penalty. So you're sort of like, they have an advantage, but that advantage also has a disadvantage. They can fly, but because they have big old wings, you get a bonus to attack them when they're flying, right? Like just stuff like that. So those ones we would call net neutral. So their, let's say, cost is 0. So you can kind of say they have this and that and that. The second type of thing, let's say it's teleportation, right? So the creatures have a default, what we call a threat die. Each threat die is a d6. And they basically, it's sort of like they get 1 for every 2 levels of the monster, vaguely. It's staggered a little different than that. It goes with attack bonus, but you get these d6s. So those d6s fuel some of these other monster abilities. So if it could teleport, it may be able to teleport threat die multiplied by 30 feet or 10 feet or whatever it is. So then the distance they can teleport is based on the roll of those die. And also how many times they can teleport is based on, it stops when you run out of die, right? So basically that creates an internal system. So putting those abilities on a creature also has value of 0 because they're already built into the threat die of the stat block of the monster. So that was one of the big things we worked on for a long time is, can I have a base stat block for a monster, tweak it a little bit, and then just put abilities on it without needing a system to tell me this is worth 5 points, this is worth 6 points, this is worth 1 point. I can just give it the abilities and I can fuel them either with threat die or it's going to be sort of net neutral. So that took us a long ways to work out, but it comes down to a very basic thing, just sort of a weird, I would call it like a silly epiphany I had, because I was like, over 40 years or so, I've made up a lot of monsters for games or looked up monsters and then tweaked them and things like that. And I was talking to Matt one day and I was like, 99% of the monsters I've either used or created only last one combat. So it's sort of like, I want a system where I can quickly put together a monster and put it in there and have the combat and know that it's relatively balanced and it's simple to make. Now that said, we will have other monsters, like I was talking about the monsters that have things like save or die or some equivalent to level drain or very scary powers. Those are more like
Scary
named
monsters.
named monsters. They will have individual stat blocks. There'll be things, and we'll have pre-built stat blocks for a lot of the monsters through the Gazetteer section. But this particular monster cauldron was more of like, yeah, I want flying monkeys. And and I also want like a weird golem. And be like, okay. And you should be able to just take a few minutes, throw it together, and it should work. So far from everybody on the playtest who've tested them, I was quite happy with this, that the monsters seem to be scary enough. Nobody said they had an easy time. That made me kind of happy. They're like, it was a rough fight, and I was like, cool. That's kind of what I wanted. Yeah, yeah.
And more importantly, is that Winston I see behind you?
You see him over there?
It is. Yeah.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
1 second.
Sorry.
Hey, Baba. I'll bring him. I'll come and see. Is that Papa? Come on.
Oh, look, star of the ship. Yeah.
Oh, he's adorable.
Oh, look at that face. It's the face of an angel.
Yeah.
Look. He doesn't know where to look.
He's like, oh, I was lying on my couch.
Yeah, he was like, I want to go back to my bed.
You want my bed? You're these strange people looking at me.
There you go. Yeah. He's always around.
Oh, he's beautiful.
I'm surprised he came up. He was bored of me earlier.
It's like, what are you talking about?
The...
Are you still talking, Daddy? He went.
Yeah.
That's what we get off our girls and boys. They moan at us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah, it sounds fascinating, and it's one of the things I've always done is created my own creatures, and fifth ed I didn't find too bad once you got the hang of what you could put in, but there was still a lot of judgment calls to be made. 3.5, that was the one I hated. Putting creatures together in that system was just maths, a lot of maths, and adding numbers and then trying to balance, and the party kill it in one round, and you're like, well, that's 2 hours of work down the drain. Yeah.
Yeah, 3.5, even running some of the monsters, as the players got higher and higher level, and you want it to run more and more powerful monsters, and they get more and more complicated.
Yeah.
That's a little bit where 3.5 kind of outstripped me a bit. I was like, this is getting really
Yeah.
cumbersome a bit. Yeah.
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 And
And the
yeah,
system was really integrated. um, like there were a lot of things in older systems where I could be like, oh, we'll ignore that rule or we won't use that rule. But there are a lot of built-in systems where if I said, let's say we won't use attack of opportunity,
yeah,
there could be like a major ability of a character class or a monster that keys off of attack of opportunity. And if you don't use it, that monster is actually your character is super nerfed.
Yeah.
So they'd kind of built it in so tight that it became kind of fidgety at the later levels. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt the pendulum really swung from AD&D second edition. I felt was going in the right direction. It was providing a bit more definition to what a character could do compared to first. And
Yep.
then all of a sudden, third came along and everything was defined. You had a DC for everything. Every skill was so defined, you had no leeway in it. And a player could turn
Yep.
around and say, well, I rolled a 30 and diplomacy says I can tell that person to follow me, even though I've killed his family.
Yep.
And you're there going,
Yep.
I don't care what it says in the book. You made a mortal enemy there, and you're never going to get them on board.
Yep. And I felt like that too. We played a lot of first edition,
Mm.
and first edition's pretty straightforward, especially for a player. It's the player's handbook has about maybe 30 pages of rules. Then the rest of the pages, the other 100 pages or so are mostly spells and tidbits about the planes and some other stuff like that. When second edition came out, it was almost like first edition was sort of our baseline training wheels.
Yeah.
And second edition gave us like non-weapon proficiencies and organized the classes a little differently. And we were like, this is cool, right?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I thought they did
Any,
a good job.
oh, it did. Anyway, back to what we're talking. Creature Cauldron. I think that's fascinating. I have purposefully not looked at anything yet, Richard, but because I wanted to
Okay.
have this conversation coming in fresh. But I will definitely now be breaking out your playtest materials and having a good leaf through.
Yeah.
On your side, Vicky, anything else on the Creature Cauldrons? Because that sounds fascinating and sounds like a sensible approach.
I was just musing the fact that all of us have taken the approach that we don't want to shackle the GM to such a level that it makes making creatures difficult and it puts too much maths, it makes it too complex and this is something that I can see from both the way that we've approached it and the way Richard's approached it is we've all come from the give the GM a break, for the love of God, make it straightforward, make it simple, but make it fun.
Yeah.
Because GMs deserve to have some fun too. So I like that. I really do. And I think I love the fact you called it the Creature Cauldron and it sounds straightforward to me. I've done a little bit of GMing, which is why I don't class myself as a GM because I tend to do most of the playing and Dean tends to do most of the GMing. But one of the things that always put me off was actually getting into making my own creatures. I've got these amazing ideas, but I could never translate them. I think looking at what you've done with Ruttigers and what we've done, I can actually now see that being something I can do in the future. Because they both systems have taken a sort of stance to make it enjoyable and fun to put your creatures together.
Yeah.
And and I've seen that done at sort of different levels before. But one thing, and you guys might have thought of this too, if both of our games are relatively compatible with others, others that might be out there, or at least kind of translatable, then there are like thousands of monsters already out there that somebody could use.
Translate,
So I
yeah.
was, but a lot of what we've done, and you might have focused the same way, is really from a game master, dungeon master perspective to be like, can I make this simpler for them, for somebody who's running the game? And hopefully that means more people who, like Vicky, if you haven't played much, when you design games like that, like if we're both sort of hitting that part, hopefully it invites more people to run games,
Yeah.
which to me is really fun.
Mm.
Yep. So
Absolutely.
yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and the
And that way I can give Dean a break.
yeah. Well, no, you can get revenge.
Don't tell him.
And also with the cauldron, I was going to say, because you had mentioned like how many spells do we have and stuff like that. For the creature cauldron, I think I have 30 or so special traits in there. We probably have another 60 or more to add in there. We're still kind of vetting a few of them because it sort of goes with everything. Most of them are like pretty straightforward, and some of them are like, okay, we have to be really careful with
Yeah.
But there's also, we'll have a lot more traits, so you can build monsters, and we'll have some sort of pre-built templates and stuff. So yeah.
Excellent. Pretty good.
That's awesome. So considering that we have taken a massive chunk of your day so far, what I would like to start doing now is sort of just having a look at what the future holds for Ruttigers. So, from the feedback you've had already from the players who've played the playtest, what can you see being the next steps? Are you looking to go to Kickstarter soon? What's your plans? Go on, tell us what your plans are.
Well, right now, I was actually hoping this past Monday to get version 2 of the playtest out. Now, a couple people, and one of the people I was on YouTube with before, kind of requested a thing of like, could you make a custom spell system or like a caster cauldron, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I was like, oh, we gotta give that a try.
Yes.
So I've put a bunch of work into that. So I sort of postponed it, probably to sometime this week that I'll put out the version 2 of the playtest, because I really want that component in, at least a sample of it, or the structure behind it, to see what people think of that and to see if that what we're thinking might work. So that's sort of the next step, is version 2 of the playtest. I'll tighten up a few things, get that out sometime this week, hopefully. And then we're looking like after Christmas, roughly now, like February or March, we might do Kickstarter. Or that's sort of what we're thinking. But like I've mentioned this before to people too, we had a very much, there was a point where I think it was just after the OGL, and there was a lot of people like, we're making a game, and we're going to make a game, and here's the game, and here's the Kickstarter. And I remember talking to my buddies about that, and I was sort of like, because it was, the temptation is to jump in right at that point, which is now like what, a year and a half, 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really don't want to, because I don't want to make make promises, do a Kickstarter, and then try to see if I can solve the problems. I was like, I would rather try to make the game, play test it, at least the core of it, with a bunch of people, and know that this is fun and this has cool ideas and it's interesting, and then go to Kickstarter. So I feel like at this point we're kind of in the zone where we'll do a V2, we'll tighten some things up. We've already got a lot of feedback that people are like, this is really neat. There's neat stuff in here. So we're like, okay, well, if we tighten it up a notch, shoot it out to you again, get some stuff, get some people going, then I think we'd be comfortable for a play starter, or a Kickstarter. Sorry. So that's sort of next steps we're looking at now. Yeah.
Fantastic. I must admit, really looking forward to that. I think there's great things ahead for Ruttigers. I've taken a bit of a look at it, and I love it. I think it's fantastic. I think what you've done is brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to seeing V2. And put it like this, you let us know when that Kickstarter's there, and we'll be there.
Oh,
'Cause,
absolutely.
You know, I
Yeah.
think that seeing all of the stuff that we've got out there at the moment with all of the fantastic indie creators, and your system's great. I've really enjoyed looking at it. I've really enjoyed talking to you about it today. And just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining us today, because it's been so nice to spend some time delving into it. I've still probably got a billion questions that I could probably think of that I could ask, but that's okay, because I can pester you to come back for a part 2. But I must admit, it's been lovely speaking to you today. So
You
thank
too.
you very much for joining us on our first ever Indie Spotlight. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.